Hail, hail, the Celts are here, and what the hell do we care now? Things are close to boiling point at Celtic. We're seeing the board getting heckled in the stands as Celtic lose to Hearts at the weekend, which, after finishing fourth, rock bottom of the Champions League group stage, really underlines the failings of the board in the summer to really capitalise from a real position of strength.
Record profit before tax, 41 million, a very strong balance sheet and big cash reserves. So it's been very, very satisfying.
The season started full of hopes and dreams, and right now everything is turned into a nightmare. And quite frankly, enough is enough, and it's time for the club to deliver on their ambitions, on their stated goals. And in this video today, it is a challenge from us to them to deliver exactly that. If you want to support the message in this video, all you need to do is hit the like button and get into the comment section and let us know what you want to see from the club in the January transfer window. And let's just get stuck straight into it. Now, one of the main things that has definitely got Celtic fans' backs up all over the world right now is the mixed messaging that we get from the club, from the board, from the manager, from the on-pitch performance, from the transfer business that we're doing against the stated ambitions, the obvious bank balance and the obvious transfer success that we've had over the last couple of windows, turning around tens of millions of pounds in the transfers of Jota, of course, Giakoumakis, Juranovic, to name the most recent ones. And it was the transfer business as well as the style of football. We all enjoyed flying by the seat of our pants. The style of football under Ange was fantastic, but one of the things about his tenure at the club is that the transfer policy was distinctly different. And I, as well as a lot of other Celtic fans, were most worried about the transfer business with the change of manager. And I asked Brendan Rodgers what he felt about the quality of the transfer business from when Ange was in charge and what it would be like under him.
One of the main concerns all the fans have had since the last manager left is that the last series of transfer business we've done has been really good. You know, we've got a really good squad, and one of the main fears was now that Ange has left, maybe there would be a wee bit of reverting back to type or going back to previous transfer models, like you said before, would be a bit confused or whatever. In line with what Michael Nicholson and the club have presented to you to bring you back to the club, it must have been something pretty monumental, pretty convincing to be so night and day, because we know the business from before. There was, let's say, substandard players brought to the club, and if we're going to dream and we're going to go on and we're going to push, then we can't have business like that again. So for me, as I like to think I'm quite an interested fan in the club and everything that's going on. I don't really understand where a lot of the business and a lot of the ideas come from. So what can you tell fans like myself, like, to reassure us that the transfer business this summer will stay on the same kind of level it's been at over the last 2 seasons?
Well, I can tell you now, it definitely will. I think what there is now is real clarity. That's the biggest thing, around it. For me, I know that, okay, we might not be able to buy a £20 million player, but we can get really good players. And I think, as I said, there's a structure in place now that brings us into markets that were untapped before. Obviously, Mark, I'm still working there, but Mark in his previous role, he did with Manchester City, had overseen all those markets. So he has a great knowledge of them, and that's something that will continue. And again, it was that process, one of the processes that made me come back, because as a coach and manager, you want to work with good players. You're only as good as your players. Sometimes the job is to keep players out, never mind bring them in, and I think that how the club has worked, it's been very good. So we just want to continue along that line, and that's just about clarity.
Which is fantastic that when he was appointed, he was thoroughly convinced that the transfer strategy at the club was sound, there was enough funds there to make it happen, and there was already a plan in place for a few players already, like we came to see in the summer transfer window. But ultimately, as the window rolled on, we had an unexpected departure in Jota, but we did expect to lose someone in that window. I thought it was probably going to be Hatate or maybe Abada, but we did expect to lose a marquee player in the team. Jota, regrettably, is probably one of the hardest to replace in the team because he gives you that bit of magic and whatever else. But when it comes to football, there's no point crying over spilled milk is kind of where I come in on this. And if we just look at the current state of play, how we find Celtic, how we found the squad, and what is the problems we have here.
No, listen, we're not at peak Celtic is what I would say, and we've got a long way to go before, I I think will be where I'm happy where I want us to be. Yeah, I've only got 11 players. The squad's is too big. That's the reality of it. So I can't fit in all the players even into a matchday squad. It's really hard if you've got 7 or 8 players that aren't even involved in the matchday squad. So, but that's something that you have to navigate your way through. And of course, when we get to January, that'll look different.
We've also heard already from the manager that there will be significant outgoings in the January transfer window to trim down this squad so that there's not less people, so that there is less people being left out. But this isn't really that bad a situation. Celtic are supposed to be a club that's in the player trading model. Now, when you stack up lots of players like this, like lots of other clubs around European football do, it's with a plan and a strategy to loan them into other divisions which are very well scouted, and if you perform well in those divisions, you can kind of migrate across Europe and get some transfer fees on the go. Now, for where Celtic are going, and we'll come to that later in the video, that type of transfer activity and that sort of revenue generation is going to be vital for the club over the next 10, 20 years. And, you know, it feels like we're shaping up to do that, but we never have. You know, we've very much, you know, we've got that link on the go with the Austrian club now, maybe, kinda, sort of. But Lagerbielke, who we've just bought, this guy for me should be getting a loan out rather than getting sold. Try and get him playing every week at a higher level than where we found him in Sweden after the little bit of credentials that we've gave him. And then, like Moritz Jens, unfortunately not a player we owned, but after he left us, went on loan to Schalke, who got relegated. And then the team that loaned him to us and to Schalke sold him to Wolfsburg for like 7 or 8 million euros, something pretty chunky. That's the sort of transfer activity I would hope to see with the likes of Lagerbielke and Bernabe, who's been linked away to Italy and I think Spain, maybe Belgium as well. It feels very much like Yuki Kobayashi will be going back to Japan, as well as Kwon. That's the way it kind of feels at the moment. When with Ideguchi being nominated for J-League Player of the Year, it's probably reasonable to suspect we might get a transfer fee out of that somehow. And with David Turnbull been out of contract in 6 months, I really hope that he's used as some sort of leeway perhaps in January, rather than hoping for someone to come in and buy him, because he probably is just going to run his contract out. And Paulo Bernardo, I don't think we've seen anything from him to suggest that we can really count upon him going forward. So as of the January transfer window, I don't think this is a player we can look at in the Celtic picture. And James McCarthy, maybe we can get him on to Inverness Caley Thistle to play with Brendan's pal Duncan Ferguson up there or something, because he's still on massive wages, of course. But if we exclude him from this picture now, this is essentially the squad that we've got to run the rest of this season to try and win the league. And the way it runs at the moment with games in hand, this is a real title race. The first time Celtic and Rangers have been in a real title race for years. Celtic are really on the back foot in a lot of ways now, because we were in such a position of strength and we have a lot of work to do in January. And when we look at this squad, it's got great numbers in the wide areas, maybe not great quality, but as soon as Abada comes back, we've just had Daizen Maeda return to fitness. I do think that we have like a front five here that we could have as like a European level squad, front three with guys to alternate between, but we are clearly missing the 6th man. In midfield, it's been clear as day that there is a huge reliance on Rio Hatate. Without Hatate, we don't have anyone in this squad that can really play in between the lines in tight spaces with the amount of energy and, you know, invention and adventure that he does have. He can be frustrating, he does lose the ball, but without him, we've not had anyone that can even pretend to do that role. We've managed to get McGregor in there and he's done very, very well. A little bit too little too late, because as soon as he came in to do that role, with Iwata getting some minutes, Iwata gets an injury. So the midfield for me is just very brittle. Although McGregor and O'Reilly have been exceptional and Hatate is great, Odenholm hasn't shown enough. Iwata hasn't been given the chances. I can only suspect why. And I say with Turnbull out the door and the failed opportunities we've had with other players in these positions, there's a lot of support needed in midfield. Now, I hear a lot of people talking about the defence constantly, but for me now, I think the defence is kind of roughly where it needs to be. We need an upgrade at left back when it comes to Champions League level, and that means one of two things. Either Taylor becomes number 2 and we get somebody better than him, or in the summer, probably not in January, Taylor is moved on and someone better comes in and Mitchell Frame starts to gain some minutes. But I do think Naroki and Scales are both Celtic calibre and will do very good for us when asked upon. Naroki was a smaller sample size, but I do think the defence is quite set. I wouldn't really be in a rush to spend any money here. But the problem in defence, of course, is the goalkeeper, who is out of contract in the next 6 months. And the manager has already said...
But naturally, in every position you're always planning forward. So whether it's goalkeeper, centre half, centre forward, you always have to have an eye on the future.
Which is great to hear, because it really felt like we should have been looking to replace the goalkeeper in the summer. And I think overall Joe Hart has done okay this year, but he's borderline at the moment. And depending on how the season goes, his last season at Celtic might not end in fond memories, which I'm sure no one wants. We can't take chances. There's no room for sentiment. We've been making plans for a new goalkeeper, and it's something that I think has to be done sooner rather than later. But one of the main problems when we look at this squad is there isn't that much experience in it. And when you hear the manager talking about the blend of the squad...
Listen, I think if you look, the strategy of the club is that. It's sending the younger players to develop and improve. I think I've said it before here that to maximise that potential, of course, you need that balance in your squad. You need quality and you need experience. And that obviously will help and support potential that you have. So that's something that hopefully over the course of my time here that the squad can regenerate into that way.
The manager can see himself that there's more experience needed in this team to help those prospects, to help those prodigies come on and actually get good results, come on as football players, and, you know, everyone's a winner. So what are the club's stated objectives? Well, we can hear from the club themselves.
Our objective is to be a world-class football club in all that we do. And at the moment, that means dominating in Scotland and competing in the group stages of the Champions League. Well, the key priority is football success, and we always want to continue to improve. I think the most proximate opportunity for us to continue to grow is the January transfer window, where we'll look to invest with Brendan and the recruitment team to take our club forward.
And when you look back to when we last get into the last 16, the game hasn't changed entirely and the gaps get much, much bigger. But we don't give up, you know. We competed well at home against Atletico, we competed well against Lazio. We just have to be more consistent when these games come up.
It's all about moving Celtic into the global stage, reaching their worldwide fan audience, reaching their potential financially by competing in European competitions and enhancing the brand, and all that good stuff just basically boils down to winning football matches, winning trophies and playing in the Champions League every season. That's what all of that circulates around, very obviously. Now, the problem with the stated ambition that Celtic has always had, which is essentially the same thing that we've just heard there, is always qualify for Europe, push the brand out, make as much money as possible, sell some players, move on, move on. But now that we've got the new format of the Champions League coming in this season, the club know it themselves that there's a shifting focus.
But there is a shifting focus towards performance now. And in order to earn additional proceeds out of the Champions League, you now need to perform much more than you did previously. So that is a feature in the landscape going forward.
The Champions League's fun to qualify for, but you actually need to make an impact to make the money that Celtic are eyeing up at the moment. The way the new format runs, to keep it very simple, for anyone else watching this, is you get 4 games at home, 4 games away. It doesn't need to be the same opponents that you play home or away. And then after those 8 fixtures, if you're in the top section of the overall leaderboard for all of Europe, then you'll play another 2-legged affair. And then after that, it goes into like the knockout rounds as we kind of know and remember them. So it's very feasible for Celtic to have 5 Champions League home games per season, as well as 5 away games, which isn't too shabby either. And when you're playing that amount of matches,
it gives us as a club more games, it gives us more certainty, it gives us more money. The central pool has increased significantly, and it gives more clubs, Scottish clubs, an opportunity to participate in Europe.
So first and foremost, is Celtic want access to all that extra Champions League money?
Well, of course, that goes without saying. I think, but domestically, you have to win your league in order to have that possibility to be in there. And of course, when you are at this level, this elite level, then of course the finances that come with that, they allow you to allow your club to grow and develop on and off the pitch. So yeah, but you have to earn that right on the pitch, and once you do that, then everything else follows that.
So there's no two ways about it. In the January transfer window, we have to make sure that we get the job done, win the league this year and qualify for the new version of the Champions League next year. We've got a fantastic squad that we've all been very proud of over the last couple of years, and they're not quite clicking. For me, one of the main things, of course, is we've changed the manager, and that does require maybe a slight change in personnel on the pitch. As we've already heard from Brendan, his style is very different to Ange's.
But very importantly for me, the control. You know, I'm a type of coach that I love attacking, aggressive, fast football, but I don't like to be flying by the seat of my pants in a game. I like to have the control element.
Which kind of takes us round to the January solution. What are we actually going to do? How much money will we actually spend? And really, where is the ambition of the club? And this is really where the challenge is, because this is the meat and potatoes of what we all see before us and all the messaging and everything that's coming out from the club itself. Brendan Rodgers was asked when the summer transfer window closed if he was happy with the business Celtic had done.
And when you reflect back on the business that you've done in the window just gone, you're content with what you brought in?
No. No.
He was then asked if there was any missed opportunities in the summer, and his response was,
We'll talk about that in January. We spent enough time talking about that over the summer, so I don't need to speak about that now.
So like we've already heard from Celtic, the clear ambition of the club is to be operating Champions League level, is to be qualifying for it first and foremost. We have to go out and win the league. As we've heard from the manager, we need to go out and get experience. We need to get quality players at this level. The board have acknowledged that to qualify for the Champions League, we need to win the league, and even to get the kind of big Champions League money, it's not just about turning up anymore. You have to actually put your money where your mouth is and turn up to compete. So currently Celtic have been spending about 3 or 4 million per player and been getting nowhere fast. Everyone knows, everyone sees the writing on the wall. It's absolute quality, it's experience that has to be brought in that can help the club not just dominate domestically, but kick on in the Champions League itself. And I know a lot of Celtic fans, like normally myself, would be thinking there's no way Celtic are going to spend big money, especially in January, without knowing if they're in the Champions League and all the rest of it. But without qualifiers, automatic qualification, and with the potential of 5 home games on the horizon, this isn't the time to play cute. This is the time to take the bull by the horns and go and get top targets that will definitely make a significant difference to the team.
I think the most proximate opportunity for us to continue to grow is the January transfer window, where we'll look to invest with Brendan and the recruitment team to take our club forward.
Anyone that says January is a tough window to do business in, for me, is giving up before they try. Every January transfer window, there's so many players that are itching for a move to get their season reignited or to jumpstart their career. Maybe some of them have moved somewhere and it's not worked out. Maybe some other club has changed manager and now a player's fell out of favour. The January transfer market can be fantastic if you know what you're looking for and you've already kind of had your feelers out and you've been watching around Europe, around the world now, I guess, for Celtic as well, because apparently we've got some South American experts at the club. Now, we've got 70 million in the bank. We know the Champions League next season is going to pay out way more than what it normally does. I think generally we're picking up between 20, 30 million a season with only 3 home games, never mind 5. We didn't actually spend any money in the summer because of the Jota windfall, and we weren't expecting that. We were maybe expecting to sell a player, but I don't think we were expecting it to be for such a huge sum of money. So there's 72 million in the bank. Ground has been taking possession at Barrowfield and at Lennoxtown and all these other places, and they're now building all that stuff. Money's been ring fenced, it's set up to go. The club has the precious buffer to make sure that if we did miss the Champions League for 1 season or 2 at a push, it's not going to greatly impact the club. So to buy a goalkeeper, to buy a left back, to buy a midfielder and to add into the forward ranks, Celtic have got to be spending around 20 to 25 million for 4 players. Not 10 to 15 like we have been doing in the past. Player number 1 for me, David Soria, has been one of my favourite goalkeepers to watch in La Liga over the last 2 or 3 years. But for the last 4 or 5, 6 seasons, he's been constantly nominated for the Zamora Trophy, the best goalkeeper in La Liga. Unfortunately, never won it. He played the whole Europa League campaign for Sevilla in one of the seasons they won it. And he consistently gets around 30% clean sheets in La Liga. So out of like 34 games, he's getting 13, 15, 10, 13, 14 a season, playing for a very small club now in Getafe. And when you watch him, he's a very very, very capable goalkeeper, commands his box well, makes lots of diving saves. Sometimes Getafe do concede a lot of goals, obviously, but he is a fantastic goalkeeper. He's not Ederson, but he can play long balls. He can play chip passes into wingers. He can do that playing out from the box stuff just as well as anyone else in modern day football. And for me, this is the guy at 30 who was about to move to Real Madrid in the summer for 10 million euros to sit on their bench. But then Real Madrid didn't want to pay 10 million euros for someone to be on their bench, and they decided to go and get Kepa on loan before Courtois got injured, of course. And he stayed. He's now been at Getafe for about 6 or 7 years. Details on his contract are very hard to come by. But now, 6 months further down the route, Real Madrid were at ransom for 10 million euros, which I think Celtic, if we were to go to Getafe with 8 to 10 million euros, and maybe a David Turnbull, maybe we could get a deal like that over the line. I think David Turnbull would be brilliant in La Liga, probably more than Serie A. I know a lot of people say Serie A. I think he'd be better in La Liga. And Getafe are a club that would definitely negotiate a deal. We have a lot of squad players, and Getafe don't have a lot of squad players. So that's a deal that I think we could really make happen. At 30 years of age, this guy's motivated. He wants to play at a higher level. He feels that he's been doing his best at Getafe. Even the club owner of Getafe is saying it's criminal that he doesn't get called into the Spain squad, along with another guy in that team that we won't get into. But this is a guy that would come to Celtic, be super motivated, is within our price budget, I would say, and at 30 years of age, could be a goalkeeper for 4 or 5 years, no problem at all. How often does Celtic have the opportunity to sign a goalkeeper from a top 5 division that is in the prime of their career and is one of the best goalkeepers in said division? Never. Never that I can remember. And taking a guy like that into the Champions League, you only need to look at La Liga to see the standard of club he's playing against week in, week out for the last God knows how many seasons. You know what you're getting with him, and I think if you put him in a Champions League group stage in the hoops, I know goalkeepers don't wear hoops, he's a guy that will rise to the challenge, rise to the occasion, and I think we would be proud to see success Joe Hart. Now, we tried to sign an attacking, Argentinian, exciting left back in the summer, like a while ago, and obviously that's not worked out. The guy we really want to sign, if that's what we're after, is Alvaro Barreal. He is about to be leaving Cincinnati, and he is heavily linked to a move to Lens. Now, Lens, of course, we're in the Champions League this year. They've got some money, a really good scouting network, and they're hoping to maybe get back into European football again. It's very unlikely they're going to be in the Champions League, much less unlikely than it is for Celtic to be in the Champions League. At 5 million euros, this is a guy that would add everything into left back that Brendan Rodgers and us as Celtic fans would want. A genuine attacking threat. This guy can hit corners and free kicks as well. He's very, very quick, very direct. And again, I can't say it enough. At 5 million euros, why are Celtic, the board, this is a challenge. Why are you not going in for this guy? We picked up Alistair Johnson from the MLS, and he was one of the best right backs in the division, clearly. And Alvaro Barreal is clearly one of the best left backs in the division as well. There is a lot of goals conceded in the MLS, so his ratings out of 100 sometimes get a bit nerfed because they're conceding goals, but his attacking output is so powerful that his rating out of 100 is always super, super high. I personally prefer ratings out of 100 than ratings out of 10. Call me crazy. In midfield, we need someone who's in the peak of their career, a guy that is an attacking midfielder, someone who's a bit more creative, but clearly, like the rest of the team, we've got a makeup of, they need to be versatile, they need to be able to do both sides of the game. And for me, someone like Nadim Amiri would be primed for a January transfer. He's out of contract in the summer, and he's been bombed out of the Leverkusen team. He still gets some minutes in that now and again because he is very good, but the Leverkusen team has just moved on. It's so much better. New manager, but 3 different managers have came in since Amiri signed, and unfortunately, after the highs he had, maybe 2 or 3 seasons ago, he was a big part of the Leverkusen team that came to Celtic Park when we played, if you remember those games. Yeah, Leverkusen are on for big things, but he's not been playing or featuring much this season. Being out of contract in the summer, his agent has to be picking up the phone, and this is a guy that transfer fee wise, out of contract in the summer, Celtic, this guy should be really affordable, and there's no excuses for me, those 3 positions that we need reinforcements in, goalkeeper, left back and centre mid. There's no excuses in the January transfer window. I think there's plenty of high quality guys that would be within our transfer budget that would actually elevate the squad to win the league, get us back into the Champions League, and then when we're in the Champions League, maybe we can do something in the summer, but it's proper signings. We're not taking gambles. We're not buying little guys from Sweden, Poland, Greece that have never won a title, that have never played in the Champions League before, have never been in a top 5 division, and throwing them in the deep end, expecting them to do that for us when the chips were down. Now, yes, the chips were down. People were injured. We got red cards, and a lot of unforeseens happened. And I do think that actually when you take all that into consideration, we weren't really that far off. But that gap between us and Europe next year is going to be bigger, because across those matches as well, there's going to be way more teams coming in. Italy and Germany are going to have 5 entrants each. So not only did we have a gap like this to probably bridge, but now, next year, it's probably going to be like that. So we need to move ourselves on. It's time to stop messing around and just spend the money. Go and get real players in to get the fans excited, get us flying by the seats of our pants, and really make the Celtic squad as strong as it should be right now. And the last thing before a lot of you start shouting, what about a striker, Quinny? Everyone's going to be going to the Asia Cup. I do accept that. And you know what? I think the solution of Bojan Miovski would work if it wasn't 4 million quid, if it was like a loan. Maybe we pay Aberdeen a good couple of quid, because he will score goals, he should help us in the league, which is going to be worth a lot of money to us. So I think buying a guy like that for 4 million just gives you problems further down the road. We're trying to sell him for a profit, and maybe his wages or all that kind of thing. Pay him for a loan, maybe an option to buy. I can get behind that. But otherwise, the next striker we buy needs to be a guy that would push the top end of the pitch to help us score more goals in Europe. And that's maybe where you do struggle to find someone like that in January. I hope you've enjoyed this one, guys. A lot of time and effort into this video on screen now with some other stuff that we've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, share and retweet, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.